Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Quaintance from Regis High School, and it is my pleasure to be moderating today's panel, Living to Tell the Tale. Today, we have four memoirs from four incredible authors who have lived through love and loss, pain and illness, joy and discovery, and have come out stronger on the other side. Joining us today, we have Rachel Eliza Griffiths with The Flower Bearers from Penguin Random House, a memoir of found family and sisterhood, love and pain, loss and survival. The Flower Bearers is a story about learning to trust your voice and rediscovering what it sounds like on the other side of trauma. Oliver James, Unread, a memoir of learning and loving to read on TikTok with Union Square. Oliver graduated from high school as one of the roughly 45 million functionally illiterate Americans. But at age 32, he made the choice to change that. Gaelynn Lee, It Wasn't Meant to Be Perfect with Hachette Books. Advocate, musician, composer, and general badass. Gaelynn has spent her life showing people that their expectations are hers to break. Underestimate her at your peril. And Emily Meg Weinstein with Turn to Stone from Simon & Schuster. Memoir of sex, drugs, and rocks that don't roll. Turn to Stone is a darkly funny look at finding yourself in the most unlikely of places, dangling hundreds of feet in the air at the end of your rope. So I have a general question for the whole group, and if you haven't turned your cameras on yet, you totally can. So my question for the lot of you is, if you had the chance, so you've already written your first memoirs, they're great. If you had the chance to write a narrative account or a memoir from the perspective of someone in your family line or someone in history whose story has not been told, I want to know who you would choose and why. And I'd love to start with Oliver, if that's okay. So Oliver, if you could choose anyone in the world to write a biography or a memoir from, either in your family line or throughout history, whose story would you like to tell?
I'll be honest, probably my mom's. Yeah, 100%.
Any reason in particular? I mean, aside from the fact that your mom is awesome.
Honestly, she's a very spectacular individual. She just like any other person, she's had her share of ups and downs, but honestly, I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she managed to get through this life and still have a smile on her face the way she did. And I don't know. I don't think she understands truth. I don't think she understands how amazing of a person she is. Now that I look back, because my story is a story, but I came from her, so her story is a part of mine. But add on some extra stuff, and you would be completely. I don't even know how to explain it. Because again, my mom struggles at reading as well, so she has her own story, that can go in there too.
I love that. Gaelynn, same question. Oh, I think
So
you're
bad
muted.
at unmuting. Okay, so I love that answer. I think who I would pick from my own family is my, what would that be? My great grandma, my grandpa's mother. Because I found out, there's a lot of music in my family, but not a lot of performance. But I found out that my grandma was like created a big band, a little big band with her two sons, and I just don't know anything about it. Like, it was called the Stardusters, which is an awesome name, and I want to steal it someday. And just like I don't know anything about it, and I'm like, I wish I understood. Like, how did that come about? What did they do? Like, there's a picture of her and her two sons and a few other people in this band, in like a black and white picture with a little banner that says the Stardusters, and I don't know where they played. Like, I would just love to learn more about the history of music in my family, just because it hasn't something that we've talked a lot about. And obviously, there's lots of untold disabled stories that I would love to research, but because they're untold, I wouldn't be able to give you like a name of someone in particular. I think sometimes we see Helen Keller pretty one dimensionally, and I would like to learn more, but I'm sure I'm not the only one that has researched that. So that wouldn't be a unique memoir. The one of my great grandma would be pretty fun for me to dig into and just kind of understand what music meant to her, and what they did with it and what they wanted to do with it. I don't know. It's kind of a fun question. I liked that one. So thanks for asking.
I love that. And I think the Stardusters would also make a really good Broadway musical when you're ready for your next one.
When I have like, I'll wait till after this book comes out, and then I will launch another whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, new projects. Rachel, same question.
I think I'm probably in the same category as Oliver. I think I'd probably choose my mother. And I just wanted to wish everyone a good morning. I'm just glad we're all together. And I think, just having a morning with librarians and the library vibe right now for me is super exciting because that's my favorite space, my happy place. But for your question, Claire, which I love, I think my mother died 11 years ago, and I'm still finding out things from her, and I'm still learning about the kind of woman she was and how she raised four children with the illness she had, but also the courage she had. And so I think there are many things as I continue in my own journey to just discover and appreciate from my mom. So I will kind of be in Oliver's corner as far as that goes. I'd love to know who my mother was in ways she couldn't always tell me when she was alive. It feels pretty powerful to me. Thank you.
Lovely. Emily, finish us off.
This is such a rich question, and I echo the hello to all the librarians. There's maybe like a few more memoirs kicking around in my head, or actually I would say the memoir I just published is probably the most about me book about me that I plan to write in the near future. Though I've got one more in the hopper that's even more Sex in the City. But there are stories both in my own personal past and my family's past that have been bewitching me more lately. I don't know if I'd write memoirs about them. The most compelling one right now, which has kind of come up through the ether of our current political moment, the geopolitics of the genocide in Gaza, the occupation of Palestine, the ways that's connected to what the United States is doing in Ukraine, that actually resonates deeply with my own Jewish past. My mother's father was born in Bechowa, Poland, which is the town that the Isaac Bashevis Singer short story Yentl the Yeshiva Boy takes place. That story was made into the Barbra Streisand movie Yentl. And it tells the story. It's a trans love story set in like early 20th century, or maybe that's set in the 1800s. The borderlands between what was the Pale of Settlement for Jews and the white supremacist nationalist republics where they were routinely persecuted for centuries. And my grandfather would sort of allude to this story. He was born in 1919 in this village. So that was in a period when Ukrainian white ethno-ultranationalists were enacting pogroms against Jews, 1918 to 1920, and Poles, nationalist Poles. And so he was born into the pogroms way pre-Holocaust that produced some more of the ethnic violence that we see and led to the destruction of Jewry before the Holocaust. So as you can tell, I've gotten swept into this world of history and the present, and it resonates deeply with the political moment. And I'm a highly political person. And to understand that as part of my family genetic history and to see where my family genetic history meets the political moment now, I can almost feel the transgenerational elements of these stories because I knew my grandfather for much of my life and he fought in the American Army in the Allied advance. And so there's this like resonance with world history and there's the known and the unknown. But I think I might write that as historical fiction, kind of like Fiddler on the Roof. That would be a new genre. So that's the primary story I might tell, but I might tell it as more of a story or a story mixed with history.
Love that. That's so many layers.
Yeah.
So Oliver, my next question's for you. So in reading your book, something that really struck me was the way you kind of like showed this light on all of the ways that not being able to confidently read spider webs throughout your whole life. It's not just like, oh, I can't read this book. It's, I can't live alone. I don't like going to restaurants. I don't like following recipes. Growing grocery shopping is impossible and really difficult. And you were really good at masking. But in hindsight, were there signs that your family, your friends, your teachers missed? And if they had noticed, is there a way that you would want them to address it and approach supporting you?
Yeah, I would say if they did miss it, I don't know because I was a kid. So I was reading other different things. I was reading, survival skills more than I can possibly even imagine because now I'm really good at those things now. So at that time, from what I can see, right, the only thing I can honestly see that they missed was what today's society is trying to incorporate uh, 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 with young people now. Just gentle, you know, you would call it like gentle parenting, like some sense of I don't know what that would be in education because again, and when I was in school, I was physically abused by my teacher, so I was beat up, and I was yelled at, screamed at, choked, all these different things. So like, I would say like probably tone it back from the physical abuse, but even from from the physical abuse part, just meeting the kid at that very ignorant stage. Like if I was making mistakes, there's a reason. I was a kid. So have an awareness of, hey, this kid may not have eaten today, grew up in a bad neighborhood, probably, parents aren't, too equipped on schedules and he might not have the best structure at home. So if he comes in here acting up, we need to be able to read that the fact that he's a kid, he's being taught this somewhere, somehow. And I think they missed that. I wish they would have been a little bit more aware and a little bit more gentle with me.
Yeah, there's a moment in your book where you talk about like, I was labeled a bad kid, and you're like, I wasn't a bad kid. I
Yeah,
was a kid and I was acting out in
yeah,
ways and I needed help and guidance. I didn't need to be labeled with this.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ran with that too, because again, you're teaching me something. So I want it as a human when you're growing up. I don't know if all of us are like this, but I want it to be something. I didn't know what I wanted to be. But if in the beginning, most of the time these teachers are giving us these labels, the adults are giving us these labels. So you're kind of like looking for something to grip onto. So I gripped onto the bad kid and I just became the bad kid. And that was perfectly fine with me.
So my next question is a combination question for both Gaelynn and Emily. So both of you write very lovingly about your families as people who cared for you and wanted to protect you from things, sometimes to the point of basically you had to do the grown-up version of like, oh my God, mom, go away. And in reading your memoirs, I was wondering if there were moments that have kind of come up with your parents and family where they learn about stuff that you've done. And I wondered what their reaction had been. Were they like, I'm sorry, excuse me, you did what? So Gaelynn, I'd love to start with you if that's okay.
Um, that is a fun question. To be honest, my parents have not read the book yet. Neither has my husband. Like, it's hilarious. But I mean, I obviously offered the thing, but I think they're waiting for it to come out. We're pretty close. I feel like they know the stories. They've already discovered the like, oh my gosh, you did what kind of things that I have had in my life. Um, I mean, I asked them a lot of questions while I was writing because I didn't want to just like make stuff up, obviously. So we had a lot of those conversations of like, what was it like from your perspective, but I really tried to stick to like, this is the stuff that really is my story. Like,
Mm.
sometimes you can feel yourself, and I don't know if you other writers kind of felt this way, but you were kind of veering into someone else's story, and I was like, I don't really feel like that's really mine to tell. Like they should write their own thing about this because I don't want to put words in their mouth or like assume intent. And so I really tried to keep it in my lane. So anything that's in there, I feel pretty confident. Um, I remember I showed them one story and it was a memory from early childhood, and they're like, "That's not exactly how I remember it, but you're the one that was there in your head." So like, yeah, that's an interesting question. But I know that there have been many stories at like early teens through college. I would say maybe early 20s. I once I lived through those, I was like, I should really be more careful. Like I have like with someone with brittle bones disease and like just having made it that far, I was like, I should probably like chill out on the risk taking. So I mean, they know about that stuff, but that part was real. Yeah, I think that I'm just excited for them to finally read it and see what conversations it does spark because I don't really know like what they like. Um, yeah, but I think that's why I was like, whatever they say at this point, I really tried to just keep my story in there and then feel good about what I wrote, and then hopefully people will understand. And it wasn't a takedown piece, obviously, except for maybe the music industry. I mean, that was clearly a villain in the story in some cases,
Mhm.
but yeah, just kind of trying to keep it your own story was sort of how I judged that, so that I didn't feel a lot of angst about what to include or what to leave out, if that makes any
I'm
sense.
really excited for your husband to read it in particular because your pursuit of him in college, I was reading out loud to my husband, being like, I love this. This is so good.
Yeah, he. I mean, it's we talked a lot about it, but again, yeah, they haven't read it yet, so it's gonna be really fun and weird, a little nerve wracking. But I think overall, I feel like everything in there is stuff I felt like was mine to tell, and hopefully that's good enough for them. We'll see. My sister's read
Really,
it. She didn't
oh, nice.
disown me, so that's good. So that's good.
Good canary in the coal mine there. Um, Emily, same question. Did your mom go, wait, you weren't wearing a helmet? Is she freaked out by that?
Yeah, totally great question. I'm the only one in this squad who's actually published already. So I've had the experience of most of the people who are in it having read it and commented on it, and also having strangers talk about it, which feels more real. To echo what Gaelynn just said, I really felt like everything that happened to me was mine and mine to tell. I've written a lot and I write a lot about my family because, as people who aren't in the family often say, your family is like a Seinfeld episode. And it kind of is, but underneath that comedy is all the darkness and tragedy of any family dynamic. But my mom didn't know all the things, particularly what during the editing process we referred to as the road sex. And if you haven't read the memoir, just know that it contains said road sex, but it's very tasteful, I will say. I think it's very tastefully done. So that kind of disturbed her, disturbed her, and she kind of did the classic, well, I didn't know that. That's nice to read as your mother. Very nice to read. So I definitely got that one. My mom was a little bit butt hurt, I think, as the kids say, about some of the stuff about that where my parents are portrayed as kind of bashkudi, as we would say. I don't think that's really a Yiddish word, but it's a family word. But my dad, who's just he's kind of a very funny guy, and he taught me to be funny. And he was like, with the wealth of material you had, I think you made great choices what to include. And I kind of relaxed a little bit when we did something that in the biz is called the legal read, which you guys have probably already just had if you are at this point in the publication process of your memoir. And it so happened that an attorney who was based in the Long Island town where I grew up, who was on Zoom, told me that she thought I had written very lovingly about everyone in my memoir. And that kind of eased my anxiety about it. And so far, everyone who is therein depicted in some fashion, not everyone, not the ex-lovers, them we throw under the bus and the train. It's either them or Anna Karenina. You go under yourself, know what I'm saying? But everyone else has said they feel lovingly portrayed and they feel the love in the book. And there are people and family members from whom I'm now estranged in there, but everyone's like, you wrote so lovingly about them too. And so I just tried to write with love, and I think it worked out.
Awesome. So Rachel, my next question is for you. Your memoir covers a large span of your life. It goes all the way from grad school, your New York years, all the way through COVID and beyond. And you also live with another author, and you've both written memoirs that cover some of the same time periods. So I'd love to get a sense of how your memoirs have or haven't impacted each other. While you were writing, did you read them? Did you maintain a strict separation, a code of silence to make sure your viewpoints and experiences stayed separate? And now that they're both finished and presumably maybe you've both read them, maybe you haven't. How have they kind of informed your view of this time in your life that you shared?
Thank you so much for the question, Claire. I actually have to say, my husband didn't really get to read my memoir until it was finished. So I think we have a mutual respect of each other's space as writers, but just also, it's a classic thing that you see in film or books are things where, multiple perspectives, multiple POVs. And so I think in my particular situation, my perspective as a witness, as a caretaker, could never be the experience of my husband, who was, I won't call him a victim, but he was, the trauma in one part of the memoir. And so I think there were conversations, obviously, that we would have about how it was going and supporting each other, while we were both doing what we need to do as writers, which is trying to address, articulate, verbalize, speak your truth, speak about what it felt like in your voice. And so I think the respect we have for each other's voices gave us permission to go in directions that were different. I think one of the things that is now perhaps, coming out with the memoir is that by the time my husband's memoir came out about his attack, about his stabbing, I don't think many people understood that at that point when that happened, not even a year had passed where my best friend was, died suddenly on our wedding day. So I was already carrying a trauma toward this other event that happened. And that wasn't really publicly spoken about or opened up. And I appreciated my husband being private about what I needed to do to speak about that, to tell that story, to talk about that friendship. I miss my dear sister friend every day. I talk to her all the time. And when I was going through so much PTSD, which I now live with, complex trauma, PTSD, but like I still could talk to her. I still knew she was listening to me. So I would say, we, in our home, we respect each other's relationship with books and writing and being on the page, and we hold space for each other. And so, what I would write about witnessing the events that my husband experienced and what he, that's not ever going to be the same. And we just have a lot of differences in our identities and how we approach things. He is not a poet. So, all of these things I think actually expand and bring this dimension to looking at, for me, I think in the memoir, I describe my wedding day as the best and worst day of my life. And the acceptance that I now have with ambiguous grief of when you don't get the answer, you don't get to know what happened, you have to go forward and try to celebrate the best things about people who love you. And I loved what Meg was saying about, writing from love. And I feel like in my memoir, the source of the two events that happened within a year of my life, they ultimately, beyond the grief, the violence, and the trauma, they're connected to love. And so that's what I would say. Thanks.
I found that really beautiful and it came across really strong in your book. This idea of having to find your own closure when there isn't necessarily an answer. There isn't a this happened, and being able to move forward with love and with that memory to create your own closure and your own space for that was really powerful.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So Gaelynn, I also had a lot of very strong feelings in your book, and a lot of it was me wanting to punch people in the face. Several people, in fact. So you might be a living saint because the number of times you met with someone who was literally just supposed to help you and dismissed you and didn't punch them in the face is kind of incredible. But instead of choosing violence the way I would, you've dedicated yourself to advocacy and education. And one of the ways you've done this is as one of the founders of RAMPed, recording artists and musical professionals with disabilities. So as an advocate, I'd like to hear what the ideal world for RAMPed looks like in 10 years, in 20 years, and what do you hope your group can achieve? And pie in the sky, what do you dream they can?
That's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, I think just like to start out is a foundation of disability work, at least as far as I'm concerned, is if I'm going to advocate and say that every single person, regardless of their body, mind, has value, and deserves respect, that actually means everyone. And so, like, you can't for me, I can't like go and punch people in the face because I don't think anyone should be punched in the face. I mean, I know you're joking anyways, but it's really important to me for myself, and I know everybody's got their own way of doing work and that we all have different trauma, and like I know that it's not a blanket statement, but because it really matters to me that everybody gets treated with respect. It's a really big piece of how I try to operate. I mean, I'm not 100% successful all the time, and but it just, even the people that really, really don't get it, or even maybe have like malicious intent, they're still people, and that's like the only foundation I think for disability justice that like exists really, is that everybody has value. And so that is an aside. And for Rams, what I would love to see is well, what I'd like to see in the music industry generally is that some of the bigger artists, and then trickle down to all the artists, start taking accessibility in the music industry really seriously, and like actually, like, there are bands I know that have told me like you wouldn't have been able to play at any of the venues we just did on tour, bigger bands like with much bigger budgets than me. I'm a pretty small artist, and so um if that changed, I think then the conversation in Ramped could become less about like how inequitable the music industry is and more about celebrating disability culture. I mean, we obviously celebrate it now. That's a big part of what we do, is celebrating the unique contributions of all sorts of disabled artists from different backgrounds. But it could be more specifically a cultural organization and have to do less of that advocacy piece. But right now, it's pretty evenly split. When I co-founded it with Lachi, a big part what I wanted was that database. Um, it sounds so nerdy, but we're librarians are here, so maybe it's okay. Like I wanted a database of artists so that if somebody wanted to get in touch with a disabled artist, it would be easy to find a ton of us, and I would just love to see that number continue to grow. So in 10 years, if we had thousands of artists in this database, um, professionals with disabilities, which I believe are out there, it would just be really neat to just have our numbers grow to a point where you can't ignore that disability is like an integral part of the music industry. So I guess that's my answer to my question.
Love
Thanks.
that. Um, and I am mostly joking about punching them in the face, but even
No, I understand.
the one moment where you like, even I saw this in your book, like the one moment where you like almost lose your temper is when you're talking to that woman on the phone who's basically saying, no, you don't get benefits. And
Yeah.
you know she's wrong. And you lose your temper. And even after, when you've lost your temper and she fixes it, you think to yourself, like, I shouldn't have lost my temper. She's a person. And I thought that was such a moment of grace for this situation that frankly all of us would lose our tempers in,
But
because
yeah, that was a hard moment. But I must say, like that's the thing, is where we like I don't think she would have looked into it if I hadn't lost my temper. So it's like a double-edged sword, because I think she really was just going to dismiss me. So it's tough to know when to like just really hold the line. But generally, yeah, the goal is you can hold the line without belittling or demeaning people most of the time, and I think that's generally the way I try to go. But I definitely lost my temper then. So like nobody has, like, there is a limit at some point, I suppose, for everybody.
speaking of holding the line, so I have a question for Emily and Rachel. So both of your voices are really strong in your books, and learning to trust your voice and your wisdom is a huge part of both of these stories, I found. So Meg, for you, trusting your own two hands has literally been the thing that keeps you from like falling to your death and going splat. And Rachel, you talk about times when other people got in your head, planted doubts that held you back from being true to yourself and your work. And so my mom calls this realization hitting 50. But I'm curious, at what age did you feel like you learned to kind of trust yourself and your own intuition? And was there a singular moment where you just kind of realized, like, actually, no, I got this? And did you, in writing these books, look back on times when maybe you weren't as confident and feel some kind of way about it? So I'd love to start with Emily, if that's okay.
Great question. And really gets to something that's at the heart of Memoir. We've been talking a lot about like how our stories intersect with our families and our histories and our relationships and the world and our work. And a big thing that makes Memoir kind of different, or unique, is that it's also a conversation between a person and themselves. And that can feel, if you don't do the work of like crafting it, which I think we've all done mightily, if I do say so, then it can become very interior, but which makes this such a great question, Claire, because where does that voice come from? The like, it's your intuition. I've been getting into, it's very hot right now, internal family systems therapy. Chani, the astrologer, is into it, if you're into her. And it's this idea, it's kind of a reiteration of other versions of psychology. It's this idea that we have different parts that are the different parts of us that have gone through all the different experiences that we've been all sharing just in this hour. And they are the parts of us that take over or speak to us most loudly all the time. And then there's this idea of your higher self or the interior voice or the voice within. That's what you're describing, Claire. And that's a huge part of my memoir, is kind of how, and it's right there in the prologue. It's like, I didn't know what to do next. And for the first time ever, I heard a voice and it told me exactly what to do next. It's interesting, like, that you put the number 50 on it. I'm in my 40s. The book is about my 30s. So there's this like rolling over, or like the person who wrote the book, and I can see how this will repeat if I write more books, which I plan to. The person who wrote the book is like older and wiser than the person who lived the book, if it's memoir. But what you're kind of reporting on is that encounter with the voice of the higher self. And that's was the inspiration and spark of why I wrote this book, because there have been other encounters with that divinity and interiority and certainty and knowing and wholeness and mystery, and all the intersectionalities that create that kind of sense of harmony. That sounds very woo-woo in California. But it's really, for me, it was this intense physical experience in the wilderness with people, at the very edge of my own experience, my own limits. It all just gets stripped down, and quiet is the word I use to describe it. It's, as much as it's an encounter with a voice, it's an encounter with a stillness and a quietude within that allows this voice to be heard, or allows you to hear the voice.
Very much. Rachel, same question.
Thank you so much, Claire. And I feel like there's so much wisdom in Emily's response just now, of just that quiet, that calm. I think for me, when I think about your question, it's almost after I finished the memoir, or as I was finishing the memoir, I realized like a kind of rebirth of myself. I was destroyed from everything that happened to me. I kind of was nothing. I had been broken down by so much trauma and violence and grief and all the things. And, it's not even just in the year of my life, but that was maybe the culmination of years of kind of people pleasing, eldest daughter syndrome, being a little parent in my family, as the oldest girl, internalizing my mother's trauma, all these things. Suddenly this year was just like, no more, you're done. You can't actually take physically in your body. My entire body shut down. And so it was like I used the last energy of that self that I was to write that memoir. And so it's this kind of beautiful gift that now for me, the flower bearers, is me offering flowers to other people, because I know I'm not alone. I know everyone who is on this panel today, there's been suffering, but there's been wonder. There's been transformation using language, reading, what reading does to you. So it's this thing that almost kind of, as I came out on the other side of the memoir, I thought, you know what, you have to start all over. I'm not 50 yet, I'm very close, but it's like you still have time to meet a better version of yourself that you can trust and protect you, going back from childhood, going back to wanting to be a young writer and being in New York and having these multitude of experiences that could be really beautiful, but also very jarring. growing up in a house with a mother who was chronically ill, and that effect that it had on my perspective on everything, and the closeness of death all the time, because my mother would often be in the ICU, or I would be told she's not going to live, she's not going to make it, and I'm a child. And then I would carry that forward into all of these different spaces, including my artistic space. And so, I think I think I kind of wake up each morning like kind of grateful,
Mm.
actually very grateful, because I know and I'm very aware that it could have taken a different turn for me, that I could still be kind of the nothing that I was, and that it could go on for years. It could, the kind of things that I write about in my memoir would be enough for me to just disappear. And I think that this thing that's happening to me now is like I'm coming home to myself. I'm my own mother. I'm my own daughter. I'm my friend. I show up for myself. I protect myself. I have boundaries. I had to learn all of these things. I started dancing, I thought to, the child, like, what do you want to do? What didn't you get to do? Because I'm going to do it for you now. And it was that basic, meditation, mindfulness. And again, like Emily, nature for me is the compass. Put me next to a tree, I'm holding on to that tree with gratitude. Put me just the leaves changing, the seasons, and knowing that in the way that we cycle through seasons, I've cycled through a kind of season now. And so I can, the memoir is so vulnerable, and I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone is going to, these things about me, and it's public and it's awful. And I have a dissociative identity disorder, and I'm depression, and I tried to kill myself like 6 times, and everyone's going to know. But I wake up now, no one can shame me because I said it. I've told you who I am, to quote James Baldwin. I told you, but it's like the you is me. And I can say, it's okay because you're a human being, but you've always cared about being in service to other people and watching them bloom and helping them be the version of themselves. Why can't you give that to yourself? Why don't you trust yourself that you deserve that? And so I'm grateful for the way that my art, both as a writer and a visual artist, allows me to meet myself in different selves and different identities and different perspectives and angles, and ultimately want to communicate and share stories and experience with other people. And so, even today, deeply moved to sit in this virtual space. I know, but think of all of the stories that are just contained in this 148 people sitting here with us today, who care about stories, who care about reading, who know it's essential to hand that child a book at the library. It's a game changer. In my memoir, in the very beginning pages, I'm on my wedding day, and from my window, I can see the Wilmington Public Library. It saved my life as a child. It did. It was the place I could go. I could be safe. I didn't have to be something I wasn't elsewhere. I could just be Rachel Eliza. And so for me, there's just this gratitude and just wanting to share it, because the more I give it away, the more I receive. And so I think that's maybe what I'd say about, this question, which I will be thinking about later in my day as I take a walk and, look at the light and the trees and just breathe. Because it's not something I take for granted. I didn't know how to breathe for a year. I felt like I was always holding my breath. I would hyperventilate. I'd pass out. I couldn't even walk sometimes because of my trauma. So it's like the simplest things are like really delicious and sweet to me right now. Thank you.
Thank you. That was incredibly beautiful. And both of your books had that feeling for me of rebuilding yourself from trauma, taking brick by brick and deciding who you were and who you were going to be stepping into the next day. And I really appreciated that. Thank you.
I just very quickly, Rachel, that was so beautiful. And I think what the word that comes into my mind is, it's the liberation and the alchemy and the true magic of the writing process. is that you get free of it when it's in the book. And wait till you guys all publish, like the weight just lifts of the whole story. And it's not yours entirely anymore. Like it doesn't heal the trauma instantly, but it lifts the weight of it, and you get this empty space back in yourself where all that story used to live, because that story has a number in the Library of Congress. So it's all taken care of. And then it's so liberating. And it comes through the magic of making something out of nothing and making something coherent that can be shared with other people. And if you tell the truth and write from love and with love for yourself, first and foremost, and the reader, I think also equally, then you're good to go. And it can truly set you free. And then the other liberation comes in the connection with other people. And you get letters from strangers that say, this is my story. I lived it in a different way. And now I am free too. And it can really make it feel like it's all worthwhile.
Emily, in that vein, I actually had a question for you. So you talk in your book about how one of the reasons that free climbing or climbing is so freeing is that there's not really this need for like academic perfection. The 98 out of 100, what happened to the other 2 points thing, which my dad did to me too, doesn't exist in climbing. It's, did I make it to the top of the wall? It doesn't matter if I made a mistake, I got there. And I'm curious, like, has this mindset of, as long as I get to the top, been something that's impacted you as a writer? Have you noticed a change in your process and kind of how you feel about your writing since you become a climber?
This is such a great question I've been waiting to talk about, because I feel like I could write another book. You know how I think they're called craft memoirs when writers write about writing? And I want to be like how rock climbing can help you publish your book. Like,
Love it.
my ability to withstand the constant failure, the sense of throwing oneself repeatedly against an unyielding wall, the exterior noise of the publishing industry process, my ability to tolerate that increased exponentially due to my 7-year pilgrimage through the world of hardcore trad rock climbing. Because my memoir describes how I was kind of like this perfectionistic, super nerdy child who kind of had to set free from these notions of perfectionism and working for the approval of others, and how extreme trad rock climbing, or very moderate actually, trad rock climbing was a way for me to do that. And part of the writing process or the publishing process, my very first summer in the Valley, chapter 6 of my book, Valley, at the end of that summer, I got a scholarship to a very fancy writing conference, and I got to go to the writing conference for free. And the like fancy writer in my seminar, like for some reason, hated the essay that I brought and like savaged me in this like 2-hour workshop where you're not allowed to speak. And I ran into the woods in the wooded area where the fancy writing conference was, deep into the woods, and curled up by a stream and cried my eyes out because my dreams of writing had been dashed before my eyes. But I had just spent the summer in the valley, Yosemite Valley, and though I was not nearly the climber and did not nearly have the potential as a climber that I was and am and do have as a writer, these people had taken me in and taught me their ways, rather than like stomp on my dreams. And so I went deeper into climbing and ended up living the experiences that became this book. And after the life and death stakes failures of rock climbing detailed in the book, rejection letters just didn't hit the same. Like they still hit. Like I still cry every time I get a rejection letter. I'm a big baseball fan, and I was watching the Seattle Mariners just crying when they got eliminated. And I heard on the We Can Do Hard Things podcast, I heard Abby Wambach, the professional soccer player, talk about crying being a sign not of being a sore loser, but of how bad you wanted to win, or how bad you wanted whatever it was you wanted. And my book is about desire, among other things, all kinds of desire. And any writer who gets published knows that it takes just a tremendous wealth of desire and sort of dogged, almost self-destructive desire. And rock climbing, more than anything else, besides being a New York Mets fan, has taught me to pour my heart and soul into something that appears that it will not necessarily yield, and to literally throw myself at it until I get to the top. So yes, it affected me very deeply. Thank you for that question.
Love that. So as weird as it is, we are in the last couple of minutes. So I'm going to do a really quick group question for you all. And then we actually have to send our librarians away, which is very sad for me. So my question for you all is, if you could send your book back in time, either to yourself or to someone else, who would you send it to? What point? And what would you say to them as you sent it? And I would love to start with Oliver.
Start with me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. There's so many, I could go with like a cliche answer and say like I would want to send it back to my younger self. But my younger self kind of needed to go through what he went through so then he can be the person that he is now to tell people the things that the people need to know now. So then I would mess up the whole sequence of what my purpose of being here was for. So I'm like, can't give it to that person. So I probably would want to give it to like maybe to like some really suffering like slaves or someone, I don't know, like someone that they can see like some sense of hope for the future for the things that they're doing in that time, like that their hard work and stories that we've never heard of and what they went through and who they stood up to get me here. Probably like, maybe it could be like a Bible for them in a way. If it just dropped on their lap, they'd be like, what the heck is this? This is a future Black person who's talking about stuff. I'm like, yeah, there you go. Dope. So like probably something like that.
Gaelynn, go for it.
I think I wouldn't know how to unmute. I think I really wish Judy Human was still alive. She's one of the people that like was really instrumental in the disability rights movement in the 70s. I mean, there's a lot of people from the disability rights movement that are no longer with us, and I think I would send it to them maybe earlier in their careers. I ended up kind of not knowing where to end the book, and I realized I would end it on a phone call that I had with Judy Human towards the end of her life, but she never knew that it made it into. I mean, I don't even know if she knew I was writing a book. Like it was just kind of like, but it felt like the right way because my whole existence as a disabled person growing up in the 80s and 90s into now, like would have looked so different if they hadn't done the work that they did to secure like education. Like I mean so many things. But I can't even begin to explain how different my life would be if that generation of advocates, however imperfect it was, because I mean it wasn't like the perfect movement, but like holy cow, like none of the stuff that I've been able to do would have been possible, and I just kind of wish I could have shared that with her. It would have been meaningful for me to like thank her, kind of. And that's what I did in the book, and I suppose maybe in some ethereal way she has received it, but it would, like that was a little bittersweet that she didn't actually get to see the book. But I'm glad that generation was part of it in the end, like towards the end of the book. I got to think about it because it really, you look at your life and some of the things that have happened before you really shaped who you are, even if you weren't directly involved, I guess. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Love that. Rachel, same question, please.
Thank you so much. The question is just, I'm so moved of just hearing everyone's responses and things like that. I think there was someone in the comments who asked, about our books. I wanted to just hold up my book, and I'm holding it up. The cover, this is myself. So as a photographer, thank you, Oliver. I love your cover. It's so beautiful. In my studio, I did this by myself, and I kind of wrapped my head with flowers and things and the lighting, and just, it was very emotional. So this is a self-portrait. All of myself's connected, but the flower bearers, I write about my experience with my husband, but I also write about the grief that I have of the sudden, unexpected loss of my very best friend. And so this book, everything is for her. Her name is Camila Aisha Moon. She was an amazing poet. She was 47 years old when she passed away very unexpectedly in Atlanta. It's weird to have a book you didn't want to write. And for me, I didn't want to write The Flower Bears. I tried to write other things. I tried to write poems. I tried to start a novel. I just thought maybe I'll just paint and like shut up for a while because I don't understand this world anymore. I don't know why this person isn't here. And in this book, not only is her life and my perspective, our friendship of what she gave me to be the writer and the person that I am now, she helped me see myself. We saw each other in this beautiful way, and I want her to be here more than anything. I want to pick up the phone and see she's called me, and my phone tone for her is Minnie Riperton. Loving her is beautiful. It's easy, and so the book is for her. It's for my husband, who's still thankfully here, but it's hard to hold a book that you feel so vulnerable about because it's about someone not being in your life who was in your life for 17 years. I miss my mother. I wish I could give her this book to say, here are things about me that I could never tell you, but I think you probably knew them anyway because you loved me unconditionally. And so I feel so sorry. It's a lot. To hold space for my friend, to have this book for her life, but her life keeps going. She's not here, but she's here all the time. And that's what I have to remember. This is her favorite season. When I see beautiful trees, I say, there's Aisha. I turn on Roy Ayers. I turn on D'Angelo. There's Aisha. She was from Nashville. She loved music. I turn on our playlist of things. And, you know, I know, I don't know. It's too serious for me to say I would know what she would want, but she knew who I was almost more than anyone in my life. And so I think she would know that I would have to write this kind of song to her, this love letter to her, and also to myself. So, I just love this question. Just yeah, I've showed up for myself in this book. I'm good with memoir for a while, actually. I want to go back to fiction, poetry, painting. Memoir was not something I really saw myself ever doing. I just thought, I live a quiet little weird life and I just need that weirdness and my trees and my plants and my dog, who also died during the time I wrote this memoir. So I just, you know, to myself, it's like you've shown up, but like this word that I think Emily and maybe Gaelynn use, like, I'm liberated. And Toni Morrison says, like, if you want to fly, you got to give up the shit that weighs you down. And I put a lot down. I put a lot into the water and I've let it go. And it's made me open for all these other spaces in my life. And I have more hope than I've ever had in my life. And so this book is for Camila Aisha Moon. It's for my husband, Salman Rushdie, and it's for a little girl who sat at the library and read highlights and thought, one day I'm going to have a spine on a jacket and it's going to say my name. And that's happened. So it's already enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, I know we're short on time.
Yeah.
Actually, we're over time, but give it to me. Who would you
Okay,
send
I'll
this
make
to?
it very quick. I think to echo exactly what Rachel just said, like, there's a version of me ever since I was like, could think and read and think and talk and heard a voice in my head telling me the whole story of my own life. I knew this book existed. And I basically just was trying to get my name on the spine. And then one day the box came and there it was, and the work was done. And and in some senses, the the little girl that I wrote this book for, the teenage girl I wrote this book for. I tutor kids. That's my day job. And so there are always teenagers in my life. And it's for them and for that version of them, of me rather, and for all the permanent teenagers out there. It's for them too. So it's kind of, books allow you to go beyond time and bend time. So yeah, it's for every version of me that's existed as myself and other people throughout time.
Love it. Guys, thank you all. I've had so much fun talking to you all. So a big thank you to our authors and to everyone in the audience. Next up, and actually right now, there are 3 concurrent panels: Queer Love, Crimes and Curiosities, and Best Served Cold. So I hope you enjoy the rest of today's programming, and happy reading all. Thank you.
Thank you.